controlled demolition of the current financial system and restructure is happening right before our eyes. The current supremacy war is heating up. New tax policies, ending the Federal Reserve and the IRS as we know it. New banking system. How about the US dollar? Are we returning to a gold-backed currency, ultimately en route to a digital currency, a stable coin into an encrypted QFS? By reading the pages of this book and taking advantage of the opportunities within, you will become informed, empowered, and connected with the confidence to act. Saving America and protecting your wealth are not spectator sports. Will you be on the wrong side of history? It requires effort and due diligence, then action on your part. Action changes things. It's time. As we witness the greatest financial reset in history, prepare for a new era free from the shadow and control of the cabal. The future is bright, and it belongs to us, not the corrupt elite. We are mid-transitioning. We've not yet arrived. What's occurring during this transition? Danger. This is the danger zone on the economic and financial battlefield. There is tremendous opportunity to prosper. Strategies, models, and proposed solutions will be defined within the pages of this book. This is indeed a must-read book which should be shared with others. The Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. Pick up your copy today of this 5-star rated book at Amazon.com.
June 3rd, Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. We are live. Welcome back to the Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. And joining me today in just a moment are our returning guests, Will Barney and Bill Armour. A couple of announcements. There's a lot going on at JMC Broadcasting. I want to keep everybody up to speed. And an easy way to do that, folks, go to jmcbroadcasting.com and subscribe for free. Also, go to the Follow tab on our website and go like us on and follow us on our Rumble channels, Facebook pages, X, Truth Social, YouTube, whatever your favorite flavor is. All right, Off-World with JMC launches this month, June. This is a monthly panel show, a new panel show that I will be hosting, analyzing the information that the president is releasing now concerning off-world activity, and going a little bit beyond that as well. So this is an announcement. Stay tuned for the specific dates. It's coming up very soon. Next image. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox joins me in Conversations of Consequence. For those new to me, that is a broadcast I launched 7 years ago, reinstated it recently, last couple of years, and where I interview people, important voices of our time, and we get to learn about them, their life, their journey, when they were young, all the way on through to where they are today. And typically the second half of the discussion evolves around their views of the world today and tomorrow. So come join us next week, retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox in Conversations of Consequence. Also to announce, we are going to take on healthcare now. Everything we've been doing at JMC Broadcasting, as you know, certainly our loyal followers, and thank you for following our work and sharing it, we focus on military intelligence and economic reporting with, by and large, experts, credentialed experts in those respective categories. We're going to be doing the same exact thing now. I can't do it as your show host. Your show host is on the screen. Her name is Christy Lee. We worked with Christy at American Media Periscope, and we're honored to have her back. She will command as host the healthcare area. So premiering this month, Christy Lee, Truth About Health. Stay tuned for that. We'll be doing monthly panels later. All the doctors you know, and some we'll introduce to you, filmmakers and healthcare professionals, to take on health, to restore our health, to help those vax injured, to talk about legislation and what RFK Jr. is doing and some of the barriers he has and successes and what's coming down the pike, as well as touching on a bit Justice Nuremberg 2.0 for the healthcare boys. All right. Also, Patriot Q&A. Mike King is in the house. What is Patriot Q&A Hour? It's for premium members. Everything we produce at JMC Broadcasting is free to the public. We do have a premium subscription for under $10 a month, where in part you get to see this. Once a month, we bring in a power guest to answer your questions. Private Zoom room live. And we had Juan O Savin just last week for the month of May. And Mike King, we're real happy to have Mike join us in June. So how do you participate? Go to jmcbroadcasting.com, click on premium portal. Learn all about it. If it's a fit for you, we very much look forward to seeing you there. Get your questions answered. Mark your calendars, Thursday, June 25th, 8 p.m. Eastern. All right. Let's talk about Juan O Savin. I just spent almost a full day and a half with Juan in Bangkok, face to face. I'll talk about that later. Be sure to join Juan. Go meet Juan. See him at the Fraud Fighter Summit, June 15th through June 17th. That is, if there are seats still available in Las Vegas. Among the guests on the panel at this event, Juan O Savin, host Nino will be there. Peter Tickton, Steve Bannon, Roseanne Barr, Eduardo Bolsonaro from Venezuela, Professor Dave Clements, Wayne Allen Root, to name just a few. Also joining remotely is Jim Caviezel, G. Edward Griffin, who I understand has got a new book coming out. God bless Mr. G. And also invited is RFK Jr. and Tina Peters. Let's be clear, invited, not yet confirmed. RFK Jr. and Tina Peters. And I'm told by Juan face to face, if Tina cannot make it on the stage, there's a chance she will make it then remotely as well. So let's stay tuned to that. But regardless of Tina and RFK Jr., you've got a packed house of important people covering all the fraud. The F word is everywhere. Everywhere you look is fraud. They'll be taking it on in Las Vegas, June 15th through 17th. So visit fraudfightersummit.us and see if you can get a seat. Now, if you can't make it for whatever reason, we are working on the details. We're pretty certain we will be able to live stream it for you right here on our website, jmcbroadcasting.com, and on our various social media platforms, depending on where you watch us. So we will be streaming it for those that can't make it there. Also debuting is Jim Caviezel's film, Dark Horse. I got to see the screening of Sound of Freedom and met Jim back in the day with Juan many years ago. Jim Caviezel says Dark Horse, Juan has told me, is, I think I'm paraphrasing, Jim feels it's really a role he is really thriving in and among the top roles he's ever played. We won't be able to stream that for obviously reasons. It's a screening. We can't put that out there just yet. But we'll stream the entire rest of the event. So anyway, that's a bit about Fraud Fighter Summit. Go meet Juan, show Juan some love. He's certainly done so much for us. All right, let's move on. Speaking about Juan, take a look at images 4 here. Let's leave that image up for a moment. I published this handshake of Juan and I in the lobby of the Hyatt where we were in Bangkok. Some of the highlights that Juan and I discussed, I'm going to talk with Will and Bill about. When will the EBS occur? You might not like what you hear, but you should like whatever you hear, because you should trust the plan. They know more than we do, the military. We'll talk about the U.S. dollar and the Fed note. When will that U.S. dollar come in, the new one, Treasury one, come into the system? These are some of the highlights of what I took away with 12 hours with Juan. I flew into Bangkok, 9 hours we sat in the lobby with just one restroom break. The lobby lounge restaurant, of course, and 9 hours we locked eyes and minds, and I took in a lot of information, and I want to make sure I get it across to you. So your Wednesday night, June 3rd, I think it is, at 10 p.m. Eastern, we'll be publishing a 2-hour plus episode I just recorded with Juan yesterday morning after coming back from Bangkok to deliver not everything that he shared with me, but a lot of it in this episode. You want to watch it. But we're going to touch on some of these issues with Will and Bill in just a little bit, about bonds, stocks, real estate, gold, Trump resetting its value, the floor for silver. I think you'll like what Juan has to say about that. Now, let me just get this out of the way. I feel great, but I still have some residue here. Pardon my coughing, but would you rather me not do the show or have a few coughs within it? So I respectfully apologize for that. The show goes on as far as I'm concerned. As long as I have voice, I will speak, and I'll get this handled, so bear with me. All right. There's Juan and I having some fun. Yeah, that's me in what seems to be the boots, but they're actually shoes. And there's Juan in sneakers. And people's like, why is he wearing shorts and sneakers? It's 100 degrees in Bangkok. That's why. Anyway, thank you, Juan. It was great seeing you and your beautiful wife, Jennifer Mack. And I've met Juan and Jen many times before. Powerful information. Do watch the episode tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern. A special broadcast with Juan O Savin. And folks, take your time and listen. I am telling you, I've interviewed Juan hundreds of times over 7 years. There's a lot of important clarifications, corrections, and information and forward statements in this with Juan O Savin. And I think it's important for any patriot that's trying to stay informed throughout this plan, this operation. This is an episode you really want to listen to. No interruptions from the host. You'll get to listen to Juan, and you should listen. I know, long-winded. A lot of people don't like that. Well, if it isn't for you, listen to somebody else. But I encourage you to listen. Juan has important information for each and every one of us. All right. Pardon me again. It is going to be biblical. The divine and military convergence of the grand finale. In these days, the world is experiencing far more than just a geopolitical shift or a strategic alignment of power behind the scenes. And to my producer, let's split screen me with that symbol of Q. What is unfolding before the eyes of an awakening humanity is the literal fulfillment of arguably the most monumental promise from the Q drops, that promise being it's going to be biblical. In this final act, the unstoppable military operation of this global alliance, the global awakening of the masses, and a profound spiritual ascension of humanity fuse into a single, indivisible grand tapestry, the definitive triumph of light over thousands and thousands of years of darkness. That's why when we say it's a battle between good and evil, it's a spiritual war, you bet it is. The connection between earthly strategy and biblical prophecy forms the bedrock of this blueprint. The battle against the deep state is not conducted as a mere political conflict, but as the prophesized endgame between good and evil. The corrupt elites who held humanity in bondage through debt-based financial slavery and servitude, engineered diseases, and systematic deception represent biblical darkness. In this scenario, the military alliance acts as the executing instrument of a higher divine justice. Every legal measure, from the executive orders to the activation of the continuity of government, COG, is the earthly enforcement of a cosmic law, dictating that truth must ultimately prevail. God's truth, the hand of God, is all over this. The Great Awakening is the necessary spiritual purification process. Humanity is being led to the absolute edge of the abyss by the impending scare event, the scripted backdrop of World War III, and the controlled collapse of the old fiat financial matrix. This moment of maximum upheaval serves a higher purpose. It is designed to cleanse human souls, tear them from the centuries of mental hypnosis, and make them receptive to absolute truth. Folks, that's the plan, and it took time, and it takes time. Everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. Hang in there. When your children and grandchildren ask you, what were you doing when the global governance was being thrust down the collective throat of America and the world? What will your answer be? Freedom? It's up to us. Stop throwing darts. Stop complaining. Get busy living or get busy dying. When the emergency broadcast system, EBS, takes over the frequencies, it will collapse not only the information monopoly of the corporate press, but also the spiritual captivity of human civilization. And Juan breaks down the EAS and the EBS and how this will actually be used and when in his crystal ball, but he is very well connected, when it will be activated. So again, please listen to that episode. But what awaits humanity immediately following this storm that we are in? And Juan talks about it being a Cat 6, and we're at a Cat 2 level right now. So what awaits humanity immediately following this storm is a collective spiritual ascension into a new age of light, the healing of creation, the release of over 6,000 suppressed patents, the introduction of free energy, pardon me, according to Nikola Tesla, and the deployment of quantum biological medbeds or medical beds fulfill the promise of a world devoid of disease, scarcity, and engineered suffering. And Bill, Will, and I will be discussing this. Justice and abundance as God intended. With the implementation of the elements of Nisargasara and the arrival of the gold-backed quantum financial system, the earth is unshackled from the burdens of usury and exploitation. It is the restoration of the true divine heritage to every sovereign soul and human being. The spiritual rebirth, isolating and dismantling the old power apparatus in the Middle East, true to the guiding principle, we are saving Israel for last. And take note of the recent spat between the president and Bibi. We are saving Israel for last. Looks like we may be there soon. We are saving Israel for last purifies the spiritual epicenter of the planet from the chains of deception. This grand matrix makes it clear that the physical intervention of the military and the White Hats is merely the outer armor for a deep internal transformation of humanity. The epoch of separation, fear, and oppression, it's ending. It's a process. We stand on the threshold of fulfilling ancient prophecies, entering a golden age where humanity lives in absolute transparency, infinite abundance. We'll talk about that. We'll revisit Elon Musk in a moment. And direct alignment with its divine sovereignty. The script is written, the alliance is executing, and the light has already won. All right, chaos without clarity, problems without solutions. Steer clear from disruptive porn fear podcasters or clueless individuals. Use discernment, choose wisely, and be sure to listen to this broadcast to the very end as I provide action items and resources to assist you through this escalating crisis, because that, quite frankly, is far more opportunities and there are dangers, believe it or not. So let's get right into it now with my two guests. But a quick disclaimer, got to put this out there, you know why. The information provided by me and my guests is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered as specific investment, tax, nor legal advice. You are encouraged to do your own research and consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals. And as I say every week on this show, go to wealthcoachuniversity.com later, not now. Click on that only blue tab you'll see and download or read, your choice, 10 points, the advisor scorecard. This is going to help you analyze your team presently or help you put a new one together. All right, Will Barney brings over 19 years of experience in the banking sector, where he has developed a strong specialization in structuring funding for commercial projects on a global scale. You can learn more about Will by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on contributors on the top left-hand portion of the nav bar. Scroll down a bit, you will see Will's picture, his biography, and a link to his website, which you should have bookmarked by now, enochgs.com, www.enochgs, that's ENOCHGS.com. All right, well, and Bill Armour will join us in just a minute, but let's say hello to Will Barney. Welcome back, Will. Good to see you, sir.
Hi, John. So good to be with you again. Hope you're doing well there this early morning in Thailand.
Yes.
We're fortunate. It's evening for us, but you got to get up early, and it looks like you got your coffee to keep you awake. So good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Will. And you are right. It is morning here, folks. And that's when the drainage that likes to work the most. I get better as the day progresses. But unfortunately, I got to do this in the morning. Anyway, it's great to be here with our audience and with you, Will. Good to see you, sir. You're a powerhouse of information. You've really been becoming a bedrock and a go-to person on many other platforms, in addition to the work that we do together here every other week. And I just want to express my gratitude for your knowledge. Thank you very much. Tell us, Will, what has gotten your attention over the past couple of weeks? There's so much going on. If you want to pick a topic, or let's jump into it and see where it takes us.
Well, there's been a lot that's been happening since we last got together. Of course, we had Memorial Day here in America, and there was incredible memorials that were done. The president had, it was really all-day event. And as he started to speak at Arlington Cemetery, the rain began to fall, which I thought was very, well, it was just interesting, the timing of it, as the rain began to fall as he was speaking about the sacrifice of all of these soldiers, what they had given for freedom. And most importantly, he was speaking to a group of family members who, of course, were missing their loved one. I thought that was a very poignant event that occurred that day. As we look at Memorial Day, it's going to, I think, have new meaning going forward as we get to the conclusion of what has been a many years long war. As we look at the war against the cabal, this control grid, everything that's been foisted upon us all these years, and we see it coming down piece by piece, brick by brick. It's frustrating. I know a lot of people want to just snap their fingers and it's all done. And I wish it was that simple. We've been looking at the situation with Iran, and I want to kind of steer to that for just a second. Iran was not about the people of Iran. If people haven't figured that out by now, they should, okay? Because you had a military operation going on there that has no allegiance to the people. In fact, they kill the people in the streets for protesting. So they have no allegiance to the people. They have no allegiance to their neighbor. They have no allegiance to their country. And their allegiance is to those who pay them. And we know that this has been tying back to the bankers, to the city of London, and those that have been pulling the levers of controlled opposition throughout the world in various places. And you see the same control exercised. We saw it in Venezuela. We see it in Cuba. We see it in Iran. We see it in the cartels throughout the Americas, the drug cartels that were running all the drugs. They all are connected to the same evil group of people that's been trying to keep us off balance, to keep us always in a constant struggle. Look over here, don't see who the real enemy is. During COVID, Donald Trump talked all the time about, and he used this term, the invisible enemy. And everyone thought he was talking about a virus. He was not speaking of the virus. He was speaking of an enemy that was behind the virus. And they always, in the past, had kept to the shadows and kept to the dark places. And that's all changed now, as Donald Trump has asked them to come out in the light of day and show who they are. So as we look at what's happening in Iran, and even the Democrats made a move today, for those that weren't watching this, they passed a resolution to try to bring the troops home from Iran and reduce the pressure that's being put there to finish this situation. Now, it looks as if the Democrats are on the side of the cabal with a move like this. It did pass the House. I don't know if it needs to pass the Senate or not. But the resolution says we need to bring the troops home. Well, that's a bad move to make at a critical time when we have the strait is closed down. We have most importantly, the ports of Iran closed down. So they're not getting oil out. They're not getting money in. And it's really problematic. And every day that goes by is on Donald Trump's side. Really, it is, because they're being squeezed economically every time you turn around. And if you look at all these different countries that we've spoken about, whether it be Venezuela, let's look at Venezuela and Iran for a minute. Venezuela and Iran were the primary oil providers to the other countries that are under heavy control by the cabal, and that is the communist countries. Take China, for instance. China was getting 60% of its oil from Iran. It was getting another percentage of its oil from Venezuela. What has Donald Trump done? He's just cut all that off. Why? What happens when you cut off the energy supply to a country that has been built up over years to become the new superpower of the world? It rebalances everything. Meanwhile, the United States is pumping more oil than it's ever has in history. It's now pumping double the amount of oil of Russia and Saudi Arabia combined. So we're watching an energy war to rebalance this out. Now, energy is everything as we look at the world. John, I hope you don't mind me touching on this subject for a second, but it's massive. We can't underscore it enough. Those with energy are those that are going to power their technology that's going to change the world. And technology is coming. You know, Donald Trump talked about this in his inauguration speech in 2017, that there were thousands of patents waiting to come forward. How do you bring this really advanced technology to the people? Well, if they're asleep, you have to bring it through in various methodologies. So he's done various things to get us ready for this. It's a psychological game. He started Space Force. If you have a big ship shows up and it looks like the Enterprise on Star Trek, but it has Space Force on the side of it, you're going to think that's normal because Space Force did it. Nobody's going to think about the years of 80 plus years probably of black ops that are working on all this technology in the background. So this leads into what happened last Thursday when the White House launched aliens.gov. And of course, they put out some real teaser videos that was all about the little green men and flying saucers. And of course, when you go to the website, what is it really about? Oh, it's just about people coming into the country illegally instead of through a port of entry. So it's a little tongue in cheek by the White House when they put out these moves, but they're actually done purposely, and it's part of the psychological preparation. If you're talking about aliens, UFOs, UAPs, all of this, what do they all have in common? Well, usually with UFOs and UAPs, everybody's looking at what is this advanced technology that can move that fast and levitate in the air? So anti-gravity is going to come into the picture. And I don't think there's anybody that's been alive over the last 50 years that hasn't considered maybe there's some other races out there that have come to visit. We walk around with other races every day and nobody thinks about it. Dogs, cats, horses, cows. You don't think about that being weird. And yet we have this new introduction of this. So I think that as you look at all these, the off-world stuff and the alien stuff, I think it's really a psychological preparation for what's going to be the advanced technology. And how do you run that technology? You run it with energy. And of course, we're going to get into 0 point and all this other stuff. But in the meantime, the transition is going to be energy in general, and oil is going to be the transition as you move into that. And so Donald Trump is playing the game. China positioned itself for years to be the new superpower, to be the industrial capacity of the world, to export all of this stuff. And now that's all shifting. It's all turning as Donald Trump is bringing what? He's bringing $18 trillion of investment into factories back to the U.S., bringing back production, accelerating energy at an epic level. And all of this is about rebalancing that power, because the country that holds the advanced technology holds the future. And so this is all part of the epic war that we're undergoing right now. It's unbelievable what we're seeing.
Yes, you've unpacked quite a bit and quite a bit truths in that analysis. I'll pedal back a few comments here. This is why I'm launching Off-World with JMC, a monthly panel, because you're right, Will. The president is teasing us and having some fun, and as you stated, psychologically preparing us as well put with these videos they're putting out with the aliens, 12 feet tall, and various different things. And certainly, aliens.gov was that was fun, and also in and of itself, good information, well written, and then listing the arrests and so forth. Everyone should go there. Go check it out, aliens.gov. And you're right about it. Everything evolves around energy, which is no surprise. And I've said this before, that is where the Q operation was formed from, and I understand operate out of. Everything is about energy, and we're heading there. I have a feeling once all is said and done, we can get from New York to LA in probably 15 minutes once technologies fully get released here. 0-point energy, anti-gravity, and who knows what's left. It's fascinating. I can't wait to get into it on the other panels. You talked about, pardon me, folks, energy. I understand Japan just bought almost 1 million barrels, 900,000 barrels of oil from us. That usually never happened in the past. The landscape has changed as a result of the operation in Iran, and for good reason. And the other comment I want Will to make is, you talked about, how the stage was set. The new world order, the the globalista, the globalist plan for global governance. They were going to shift, destroyed us over the last 3 decades plus, tear down America with all the trade policies and all the stuff that's gone on, and build up China as the replacement of the U.S. to be the world's superpower to manufacture, distribute, and control and run the world. That's over, folks. That wasn't. I mean, it's coming to a screeching halt. And that's good news. But anyway, and you started off with Iran.
And it's right, not a surprise, John. Yeah. When you look at what the cabal's done, because this is a financial cabal, but they're into everything. They're a godless society of people, right? So they don't worship God; they worship Satan. Okay, they're like the opposite of that, and so they've pushed and nurtured the godless societies where the government's the God and there is no inherent God. So their involvement behind all of these communist countries cannot be underscored enough. We're watching that being completely ripped from them, and there's a reason why they keep going after Donald Trump. I mean, how many assassination attempts do we have to witness? Because he's going after their entire system. And this energy that's going to power the computers, it's going to power massive data centers are being built out in the United States right now, very big ones. What does all this mean? Well, in a new world where money moves digitally, it's being done with computational power. So the financial system is being literally built. And it's been being built for years as we watch this play out. When you take all of the movement of financial movement, which trillions of dollars a day, moving all over the world, and you start moving that through digital packets, now you need computers to be handling hundreds and millions of transactions per second. That takes computational power and prowess. And the country that has that technology, that advanced computational technology, and they have the energy to power it, is the one that wins this. And Donald Trump seems to be positioning us exactly right there to remove the power grid and replace it with something that's going to be unbelievably freeing for the entire world, where they don't need to go through a third party to send money anymore, where they can send to their family member, to their friend, to their neighbor, to their business associate, like that. And there's no banks pulling off a piece of the pie along the way. And I've had conversations with people trying to move very large amounts of money who are still continually fighting the difficulty of the current financial system, because it moves. The slower it moves, the more hands in the cookie jar on that path of movement. And that is being completely rewritten as we look at blockchain, as we look at these crypto technologies, it's changing all of that almost overnight. So my hat's off to the patriots who are fighting this battle, because they're changed the power of energy, because it had to be shifted if we were going to power the future. We had to get it away from powering the evil, and we had to put it into a place where it's powering our future. And thank you, Donald Trump and the Patriots, for your work you're doing. My hat's off to all of them.
Without question. Great analysis, spot on. Before I close this out with a couple of points here, talk about EnochGS.com, because it dovetails perfectly into what you're just talking about with regards to processing of information. These data centers, one could say he who controls the data centers controls the world. That's kind of how important this is. What is EnochGS.com all about?
Well, what we're trying to do, John, is a lot of what you're seeing on the global financial space. Is we're building out data centers and software to handle the launching and management of business so that it can be very easily done. But we're trying to do this in a manner that is safe. You know, the biggest challenge with most software systems around the world, particularly if they're cloud-based, is they're sending information over HTTP packets. It's one of the most hacked things on the planet. And there is continual cyber problems going on everywhere. Cybercrime is becoming one of the biggest issues going today. So we're trying to do this in a way that is safe and secure. We're using some advanced technology. We're using some language that is not a readily available language to write the programs in. This is to minimize the chance of intrusion. That's about all I can say about that at the present moment, because there are, of course, limitations of what we can reveal in a public space. But the idea is to create an infrastructure where humanitarian projects can not only get launched, but they can thrive, they can be successful, and they can give back to the community. We started into humanitarian projects nearly 2 decades ago now. And the interesting thing that we saw first and foremost was it was going to be very difficult to fund all these projects around the world when you couldn't move money, when money would take 2 weeks to get somewhere, and everybody's got their hands in the jar, if it could even get there. Because there was all kinds of excuses. Oh, this happened or that happened, or Homeland Security put a block on it. You know, I remember a billionaire talking to me one time. He says, I don't understand. I have money in 3 of the big banks in America. It was over 100 million per account. Okay, this is general. All 3 banks had blocked his accounts, claiming that the Department of Homeland Security had waived them, saying there was something inappropriate there and they needed to investigate it. Okay. His money was frozen. Couldn't touch it, couldn't move it. He got lawyers, he got everybody onto it. And he came to me and he says, what's going on? I says, they're trading your money. What do you mean? They're trading it. They are using it to create more money. Well, I didn't give him permission to do that. I said, it doesn't matter. It's in the bank and they're doing it. And he said, well, when's this going to stop? I said, how long has it been going on? He said, well, it's been going on for 3 or 4 months now. I got sent to you hoping you could fix it. I says, well, in another 8 to 9 months, you'll get your money. And suddenly everything will be fine. Well, that's a whole year. I said, yeah, that's when their contracts end, a year-long contract. No, that can't be happening. I says, I'm sorry, it's the best I can do for you. So he puts his lawyers on the case. They go and check everything out. And he actually came back 3 months later. And he says, you were right. We found out that's what's going on, but there's nothing we can do. And we've threatened to sue the banks, but they just claim they'll drag it out in court for another 6 months to finish the contract anyway, which they can do. And what happened? Well, at the end of the year, his money got released and he was able to use it again. And nobody knows how much they made off of it. Okay. It's just an example of what's been going on for a very long time, over many decades. This is why you couldn't take a financial reset system, put out new asset-backed money, and stick it into this kind of corrupted system. That doesn't really make sense. But when you do that, you don't put new wine into old bottles because the bottle might break, right? Well, in this case, you don't put assets into a system that's designed to let the system graft off of everybody that you turn around. So there's a lot going on to build something new. And we've talked about quantum financial system and all these different, I don't know what the official term is going to be in the end. Okay. That's a term that gets thrown around the internet. So we'll use it, I think today, but the quantum financial system. So what does all that mean? Well, it means we're going to have asset-backed money, but there's certain things that need to be in place if you're going to do that. I don't see them issuing asset-backed money if you don't have the system itself protected. And this is why we talk so much about things like the Clarity Act and things like this, because what does it do? It brings law and regulation to digital networks so that the consumer is protected in that environment. And if you don't have that protected, you're not going to launch new asset-backed currency in it. And which I don't know if you hear this all the time, John, but I get this question all the time. When's it going to happen? Well, it's going to happen when everything's done. That's the best answer I have. And there are indications that some things had happened by the 4th of July. And we talked about it last time we did this show, like, hey, the government's putting out these dates. Well, even though the government's put out those dates, I've been really taking a hard look from our sources over the last 10 days or so, 2 weeks, looking at what's been done and where we are. And we're not at a place where I think the 4th of July can be deliver the baby. Now, correct. I think it can be the start of what would probably be a series of events, okay, that would roll in the golden age, if you will. But I don't, it's kind of more of the beginning of the end rather than the end of the end. If that makes sense, right? So I think people are going to have to be a little bit patient because it does take time to do some of these activities.
Yes, it does. And I'm just going to put a message out there. I said it, I think, in the monologue, but it's apropos right now. We all get it. I mean, our lives are just as affected as everybody else's. But what we have to understand is these things do take time. We're not kicking cans down the road, playing any game with anybody. People in the new media surface space, let's say, most of them aren't worth 2 seconds of your time. But the ones that are, we're doing the best we can with the resources we have access to and the information that we get, just like you're doing. And so everyone just needs to understand, again, if you look at your children and grandchildren, say, when they ask you, what were you doing? When the global governance was, basically being thrust down the throat of America and the world, what's your answer going to be? Is it going to be, I threw darts at everybody because it didn't happen on the day we thought it was? Do something. Be proactive. Get involved, and do trust the plan. It's God's plan. As I said, the monologue, it's being implemented brilliantly with precision by military and intelligence, and now off-world. So that's where we are. Real quick, Will, the QFS, is it open for business for the public? Can people go to DM me and go to my account, and I'll get you all set up in your QFS and wallet? Is the QFS open for business for you and me? Yes or no?
No.
Thank you.
No, and it won't be unless it's fully protected and everything's ready to do that. It's going to be, I don't know how long it will take to do that. There's some talk right now that the Clarity Act might get passed by the middle of July. Some are saying now, okay, right? We would love to see it in June. People asked me back in April, well, what do you think? I said, well, if the things are going to happen the way we would like to see them and like issue new currency bills and stuff like this by the 4th of July, I think we would need to see that passed by the middle of May to give time to prep for that. But we're past that window now, right? So now I'm looking
Yes.
at this going, well, I don't see how that's going to work. There's also this issue of everybody thinks that we're going to have tomorrow there'll be a big EBS, emergency broadcast message, or EAS, whatever you want to call it, and that everything is going to change and it's all just going to be beautiful in one day. That is only in the movies, folks. In real life, we have to build things brick by brick and piece by piece. And so we celebrate as we get each part done. And we should celebrate because they're milestones. And I think that when that bill does pass, it will be a milestone. It will be something that will be like, this is great. This is a foundation we can work from. And I think that that's the point that we need to make. And I'm not trying to say, people are kicking the can down the road. It really isn't that at all. I like the analogy of building stuff. It does take time to build it. Donald Trump's working on a new wing on the White House right now. And he claims it's going to take another 2.5 years, right? Or he might get to use it for 6 months, right? By the end of his term.
Yes.
It's going to take some time. So it's one of those things where it's like, you don't build it in a day. It's going to take time, and we need to be patient with the process. We should be supportive of the effort that's going on, though, and not detract. I think the most important thing we can do is to stay in that positive energy. We create our world. We manifest our world. And the worst thing we can do is to start throwing darts at those building the world, because that just slows it down. It doesn't help it. And so if you're throwing darts at those you think that are not getting it done fast enough, be very careful about your judgment, because we need these people. We need everybody in the trenches that's working hard to do this.
Absolutely. And those that are wired, frazzled, really at the edge of their seat, frustrated, upset, calm yourself. Calm yourself. That anytime there's all this confusion and uncertainty, the person who's the calm one in the room is the grounding source and force. Be that. And we'll get through this. Anyway, thank you, Will. I'd like to, we're going to have a roundtable discussion in a moment with Bill Armour. My next guest brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise concerning the economy and precious metals. He is my highly recommended resource for your gold and silver acquisitions, inside or outside of the IRA, and your qualified plans. Visit contributors, again, on the JMC Broadcasting website, upper left-hand tab, and you'll see Bill as you scroll down, his image, his biography, and contact information for Bill Armour. Welcome back, Bill.
Great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for standing by in the proverbial green room, as it were. So tell us, Bill, before we bring Will in for a roundtable discussion. And by the way, folks, I got a lot to unpack in this episode, in this second hour of this episode. There's a lot to unpack. We're going to have our panel weigh in on some of the information Juan shared with me and other news events. But tell us, Bill, what did you see going on that caught your attention since you were on this broadcast last?
Yeah, absolutely. Two things I want to talk about. The first is just a question I got in the last couple of weeks here from a couple different people that I realize is important to clarify. And they asked me, Bill, why are we adding this strategic price floor for silver? What's the reasoning behind that? Because if everyone needs silver, it seems unnecessary. It seems like it will just naturally go up. And you're right to a degree. Absolutely, silver at some point will explode, regardless of what the government does or doesn't do. At some point, people need the metal and they'll pay whatever they need. The problem is the same thing that we're experiencing right now, is that we're in a 6-year deficit on silver. We're going a tremendously long time before the metal's actually being mined. And at some point you reach a pitfall, sort of a place where you really can't get out of it, a chasm, if you will, where there is now not enough silver available, period, full stop. And we are years and years behind development or production of silver. And so silver's going for $3,000-$5,000 because you either cannot produce, and everything around us is more expensive, right? Any technology is tremendously more expensive. So while that would be great for silver holders, what is ideal for the entire world is that transition is more gradual, right? We want to see silver increasing day over day, month over month, to $3, $4, $5, $6, $7, $800, not it's $70 and then a month later it's $1,100, right? While that's great for anyone that has silver, it's really actually kind of bad for everyone around us. So, for the average everyday world, we're talking about just, uh, you know, how much things cost, right? If suddenly anything that has a battery in it is now 50 times the cost, that's not really good for anyone. So adding that floor helps the miners a lot, because the miners, they don't look at what they could make like ceilings. They're looking at floors. They're looking at, if we start a mine and it's going to take us a year, 2 years to integrate this mine, to build it out, start getting the silver out, and then we finally get everything set up. And then over that year, there is an organized attack on silver, and silver goes down. It drops 30%, 40%, through targeted bank short selling and naked short selling. Then all of a sudden, they don't necessarily have the runway to operate for 6 months now mining silver at, let's say, $30. So the idea behind the price floor here is that it gives miners the confidence that you are going to be okay no matter what. The ceiling, the upside is still there no matter what. But the downside, where you start this mine and then you have to go bankrupt because, again, bank short selling, naked short selling, that's what this is designed to protect people from. So we've got July 14, which people can put down on their calendars here as when we're going to get the final announcement here in terms of that 180 days has passed. They've looked into it. They've developed strategies. And over the course of the next 12 months, we'll be entering into a series of deals with countries, Mexico, but countries all around, in terms of securing that price floor for metals to make sure that no matter what, we have access to silver. Where is that number going to be? What is that going to look like? Well, just in order for miners to be profitable, when I talk about that point that they need to be at for it to really be worth their time, we really need to see that in excess of $100. So that's generally where, when we talk about this, is kind of the floor here on silver. It's going to be wherever that price floor is. And most of the analysts and experts that I'm looking at, reading, and talking to are saying somewhere in excess of $100. So that's going to be a big thing to keep people's eyes out for, because right now, if silver, spot price on silver is, $70, $80, right, that's already 25% above right where it is right now. And that's not a ceiling. Again, that's the floor. If the floor is 25% above where something is now, I think most people would hear that and think, oh my gosh, that's a tremendous, I would love to buy that if I told you that the floor on something is 20% higher than where it's at currently. So, no one has a crystal ball. Obviously, these things are not public yet, but I would definitely say that that's really good news, and people need to understand why that's happening and what that means. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to just mention here for people's gratification or edification.
Wow, you've unpacked a lot of great stuff there. I've got some follow-up clarifications for myself and perhaps those listening. What is July 14th specifically? What's
It's
occurring
going
there
to be
specifically?
when they
on that
have
date?
finally, basically tallied up what that number needs to be, what that price floor needs to be. So the administration has been in direct contact with miners, with, the entire supply chain there, to figure out what can this
Mhm.
number be, where it produces the result that we want, which is miners to feel confident in opening silver mine, expanding productions. But obviously, they don't want to set it so high that it's, again, we spike the silver price so dramatically overnight. What is ideal for the world, and honestly for the average everyday silver holder, people often aren't looking to 10x their money overnight. If you can get something that is productive month over month, year over year, that's a win for you. And it's better for, again, the economy. It allows companies to catch up, allows supply to catch up, so it avoids these massive crashes. Which, the massive crash, the COMEX, crash, that's all would be, beneficial maybe for the people that own silver in the short term. But again, we want to make sure that it's not just good for the people who own silver. We want to make sure that it's good for everyone, and that's the way we do that, is having that price movement a little more gradually.
Thank you. You speak about a floor, a floor price for the precious metal known as silver. You know, I've been in and around this business for 30 years. I used to be a financial advisor. It was never in our space, and I worked with economists and metals guys for years. Uh, and you've been in the business a long time. Did you ever? I mean, this was never, at least never came across my wave pattern that we're going to set a floor for silver. I mean, it was not even a dialogue.
No.
I never recall experts like yourselves and others having conversations about this, and here it is. And it's such incredibly good news. Think about it this way. I'm talking to our audience now for a minute. Bill, think about this. If you knew that ABC stock, which is today trading at $10, was definitely never going to go less than that, and these fundamentals tell you it's going to go up, would you sell it? Well, if you know you can't go lower, you'd keep it. If it's going to go higher for public policy reasons, in addition to economic reasons, wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
Folks, this is your gift. When I say in the intro of the show, this very show, Surviving and Thriving, the transitions, both dangers and opportunities, that's probably one of the biggest opportunities that we have in this financial space ever, or certainly among. And so as to the floor, I don't want to misquote anybody. So I encourage everyone to listen to the Juan O Savin special broadcast I'm publishing tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern, just recorded yesterday morning, fresh off the heels of 3 or 4 days ago, where I sat with Juan for a day and a half in Bangkok. But I believe he said his forecast for the floor on silver was higher than 100. I'll leave it at that, and we'll listen to the episode. I want to ask you, Bill, and I don't expect you to know the answer, but it's an interesting question. Can the floor be readjusted later? Let's say they set the floor at $200 and later they raise it or low, or could they lower it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it could definitely be adjusted. I mean, it gives them the floor needs to be an incentive, right? And protection. I guess more than incentive is protection is the right word, because there's plenty incentive. I think every miner out there understands the benefit or the potential that silver holds. What they are afraid of is, again, that these mines are not the incredibly profitable industries necessarily, and they don't have the runway always to, if there is a global assault, you could say, of naked short selling on silver, they may not have the runway or a 3-6 month here cut to silver that's that dramatic. When they're modeling out how profitable they are, and all of a sudden the thing that they're mining is worth half of that, they may not survive that. And so, of course, they go bankrupt, and they have to close down their mine. And so they need the assurances that that's not going to happen. And that's exactly what the price floor gives them. Now, the administration here is, as you know, the dollar changes, inflation changes. Of course, they may have to and likely will in the future. I mean, just like, when we could talk more about this, but how on the Fed balance sheet, right, gold is adjusted to, really old numbers, $30-$40 an ounce. So that's completely different, obviously, than where it's valued now. So they do have the ability to adjust that. And speaking of the Fed, that actually is a nice transition into the other thing I wanted to mention, which is I think it was the last program I spoke on. We had talked a little bit about the share of the world reserve currency that the Fed note or the dollar holds right now. And I was curious, what the updated numbers were on that, because I was referencing numbers that had come out on the last quarter. We had, for the first time, gold as the largest asset class here, above treasuries here for the first time in history. And so I was curious what that number was. And it's interesting, what's published is that is the IMF. We all have our thoughts about them, but they are the ones who publish that. And the IMF COFR is the report that they publish. And they have not published any numbers on that currency percent for this entire year. We're in June right now, and we don't even have Q1's report yet. And I thought that is very interesting. And so I went back and started scrambling through some of the old records, and I found some really interesting patterns that I want to share with people, which is, first off, we all know that gold buying here across the world is at record numbers. I think everyone understands that, right? So the other piece here is, if everyone's buying gold, where is that gold coming from? Well, we know that it's coming from, a lot of that is dollars or Fed notes that are being traded in for gold. And we've seen about quarter over quarter that number of the dollars here, dominance, you could say, is dropped about 1% per quarter. So about 4% a year we're dropping. So if it was, let's say at one point it was 80%, 90% in 2000, 4% a year. We were down to about 50 to 55%. And then all of a sudden here, the numbers stop. So we don't get any more numbers. Now, the part that is the most interesting about all of this is the last major currency shift we have, world reserve currency shift, was the pound. And the pound had been the world currency here into World War II, obviously, when Bretton Woods happens and then the US takes it. But what was the percent of world reserve currency that the pound had at that time? It was almost exactly 55%. So we are almost identically at the number here as the last time we had a currency shift, very within a couple percent in either direction. So, another interesting note, what was the final domino that caused the final shift here, that Bretton Woods, where again, the dollar took over from the pound? What was the domino? It was the Suez crisis. What do we have going on right now in Iran? I mean, it is in very interesting thing to think about is that there is an orchestrated, we talk about some of the dynamics of this, there is an orchestrated attack here on the Federal Reserve's control, which is losing control dramatically, right? I've talked about many times how countries are repatriating gold from New York, from the Federal Reserve. Obviously, Fort Knox, I know we'll talk about that, I believe, but that's another piece here. All of these different angles of strength and power that the Federal Reserve has had, they are suddenly being attacked and all at once in many different directions. And a really tremendous attack is never one that comes from one direct place head on. It comes from many angles and attacks many points of weakness at the same time. And so, losing the gold, losing the hegemony of the dollar, all of this works in tandem here to fundamentally undermine and destroy the Federal Reserve and the cabal that is attached to that. So if you're asking, well, what happened with the pound and, what did that actually mean functionally? What does that mean for me, Bill? I'll give you a couple numbers. In the time that the following 20 or so years following the pound, that it lost its world reserve currency status, it lost roughly 93 to 94% of its value versus the dollar at that time. So the vast majority of its value was wiped out because, again, it transitioned. Now, in the past, the pound was worth, we think about them now as roughly 1-to-1. It was not like that, prior to Bretton Woods. It was a massive, it was worth way more than a dollar. But again, now they're roughly equal. You could think of the pound used to be like a $100 bill versus the dollar being, a $1 bill. So there was a huge discrepancy that eventually now the dollar is equal to a pound. So big change there. The other thing is what happened to precious metals or gold. Gold rallied about 30 times its value again against the pound at that time. So if you could get $1 of gold, now you could get 30, or pound, I should say, 1 pound for 1 ounce of gold. Now you get 30. So 30x return on gold over that time. So it tells us two things. The dollar is in a very precarious position, which we all know because the Federal Reserve and that Fed note system here is declining. And then also it tells us that gold here is in a tremendously advantageous position and it's poised to do very, very well. So I just wanted to share all that interesting research that I'd found this week.
Thank you very much. And it's always great to look back at similar circumstances, as you've alluded to with the pound and the Suez Canal. And here we have the Straits of Hormuz. But, you talked about, I was visioning incoming munitions to the Federal Reserve Board from multiple areas. And that's exactly right. And two of the greatest weapons that are part of that artillery of incoming to the Federal Reserve is, of course, gold and silver. Remind our viewers, and I'll just paraphrase this out and add a little to it. Gold will destroy the Fed and expose and destroy the Fed, and silver will expose and help destroy the banks. And that's what we see taking place right now. And it's a wonderful thing. Restoring God's money, constitutional money, and getting things straight. What I'd like to do right now, I've got a lot. We've just finished hour one. We'll get into hour two. Hopefully we'll wrap up before then in respect of everybody's time. But what I do want to get into is some of the nuggets that I got from Juan that I'd like both you and Will to weigh in on. So to my producer, let's bring the panel on. Will and Bill Armour, hour number 2, here we are. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. There's a lot to unpack. So let's be brief on areas that we know we can be, and then we'll extend out where it needs to be. Some of these things, everything here will affect all of us and impacts the economy to some extent, although some of the issues I'll raise aren't directly economic related, like the EBS, for example. And again, I'll say this once, so I don't have to keep saying it throughout this. Juan will go into greater detail on all these subjects and a lot more on that interview. I'd like this panel to weigh in on it as well. The EBS, while many, and to Will's point earlier, the government has given us a lot of dates. That's why other great guests I have on, Captain Rob Cunningham and retired Lieutenant Colonel Tom Lennox. They're following the administration and those date releases as well. But sometimes dates are given in an operation for reasons other than to give a date that will actually be that date. And I'll just say it that way. Having said that, let's talk about the emergency broadcast system. Juan's on the record stating, and I know it's a great disappointment to a lot of people, but let's learn from this journey we're on together. Again, as I just stated, sometimes dates, remember, I think Hugh even said something like disinformation or something like that sort is part of our program too. So again, I don't, everyone's so quick to say they were wrong and throw a dart. Stop it. What have you done today to help restore the constitutional republic? Okay, so knock it off, folks. Most of our viewers aren't in that bracket, of course, but there's a lot of folks out there, especially folks just waking up and taking a look around. We're all doing the best we can. And fortunately for me at this network, the majority of my guests are very well informed, credentialed and connected to some degrees, some other more than others. So we put our best foot forward. And here's what we have on the EBS. And again, as I said in my monologue, I'm long-winded here. We'll get cut to the chase in a second. As I said in my monologue about, I lost the point. Sorry, folks. We have to, anyway, let me get to it. EBS. That's what I was going to say. Podcasters. Why is there such a great disappointment when certain things don't play out the way they were expecting? George Carlin, garbage in, garbage out. You've got to whittle down your sources of information to the best of the best. And even once you do that, we're not all going to get it right all the time. We didn't get the memo from President Trump last night. Some of my folks do, but most of us don't. But we put our best foot forward. And having said that, Juan at least indicated that the EBS will definitely not happen in June nor July. And he explained why, and I think you touched on that a bit. Let's just spend a minute, Will and Bill, your view, Will Barney, EBS. And when Juan said more than likely towards the end of the year, possibly the beginning of next year. Listen to the episode. Will, what say you on EBS?
I don't see the EBS occurring until we have all of the puzzle pieces ready to go, and we're still putting some of those in place. So I'm not seeing it being something that can happen urgently, certainly not within, I would say, a 60-day window. There's just some things that need to be finished first. So that means we're looking at, he's probably not wrong. It's probably not even July. Because if we don't get the Clarity Act till the middle of July, obviously it's not July. It's going to be a little bit later. And yes, we all want to see everything shift and change, but you don't want to, the worst thing we could do, I think, is cut off the current system before we have something to replace it. That's catastrophic. So I do think that there needs to be some overlap where the Federal Reserve System keeps going, but we introduce something new and give time for that transition to occur. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. And again, folks, I'm going to be a broken record here because I do listen to the public. I spend a fair amount of time on social media. I'm trying to help everybody. I'm trying to help myself. Calm yourself. Okay? Whittle your sources down and then remain calm. Things you can't control, you're going to get all freaked out about. Why? You can't control it. Worry is a useless, a misuse of God's light and energy within us. If you can't control it, don't worry about it. Okay? And please, again, stop throwing darts at those that are fixing it. Your quick comment as well, Bill. EBS. Where's your position on that?
Yeah, I had on Memorial Day, I was reflecting a little bit and I had an epiphany, which is, what is July 4th? July 4th is not the day that we won the war, right? July 4th was the day that we signed the Declaration of Independence. It celebrates that. And so I was thinking about that in
Mhm.
terms of, what this is, and thinking that July 4th doesn't necessarily mean, symbolically that everything is done, everything is completely finished. It means that we start the process here. And, 13 colonies
Yeah.
came together and the process was started. But the war, I don't think it's going to take this long, but the war didn't end for 4 years. The fighting, still had to go on. So I just think, but symbolically, I think similarly here is that July 4th is not, necessarily everything is finished and done, but rather we ink a lot of the sort of declarations here that produce the end result of us winning the war.
Thank you. You're in good company. In essence, that's in part what Juan O Savin was talking about. Forgive me, folks. A lot of people also throw darts at me that I'm coughing. Would you rather not get the show done? I'm doing the show, folks. The cough will be gone. All things pass. All right. The United States dollar. Let's move into that. We'll go to Will Barney. Another point that we've been raising on this broadcast and many others is when will the new Treasury note? We know all about that. We don't have to, spin the broken record on it. March 26th release from the Treasury. Scott Bessent is now talking about creating a new bill. I don't know if it's $250 bill or whatever it is. We're certainly not going to take Ben Franklin off the $100 bill. If we did, I'd be quite upset. But I think that they're going to issue a new currency. Well, we know we're issuing a new Treasury note backed by gold and other commodities. But Scott Bessent recently stated that there'll be a new bill with the president on it. So the question is, the statement and question and narrative and question is this. We've been talking about on this broadcast over the last several months. I've certainly didn't have an answer. I feel more grounded now. And that is some folks in our movement. And again, I'm not throwing darts. I'll throw darts at people that I know are deliberately doing bad. Yes. Okay. But that's different from all of us that are working hard to dig for the truth and bring it to the people. Having said that, there's two narratives out there within our respective space that say that the new Treasury note cannot coexist with the Fed note, meaning our present dollar, cannot have two currencies in one economy here. And Juan emphatically said, BS. You can, it's happened before, and we will. So for me, and again, those that don't know Juan, or those that take swipes at Juan, he's been at this long before since Ronald Reagan, and knows a thing or two about currencies. I've said this a million times. So Will Barney, what's your take on the US dollar, the Fed note, being in circulation with the new Treasury note? Going to happen, yes or no?
Yes, I think you'll have both side by side for a period of time. When are we going to get that new note? That is a question. It's actually a congressional question, because the law currently states that you cannot have a living president on the bill. They need to actually change that provision, and it used to be passed through Congress in order to put president's face, Donald Trump, a living president, on whether it be the $250 bill. Some are saying that's the perfect one to have, but it doesn't matter. Scott Bessent has also said this: we follow the law, and everything that patriots are doing is lawful. And that is I think an important distinction, is they are standing upon law and order, not upon whatever imaginary foundation. So I think that that's why not only do you need this Clarity Act thing, but you need the Congress to address this issue. The Treasury has put it forward and said, Congress, can we fix this? Can we change this? I think there's support that's going to change that. So once that's done, then yes, you could see this come out. How soon that comes out could be something that's in question. In terms of the design, the Treasury's already working on the design of the note, of what it's going to look like. It's not been officially approved, so they've not released it. The only thing you can find online are AI representations, which are not the official. So rather than speculate on that, I think we just know that, number one, we need Congress to do what it needs to do. We need then the Treasury can do what it needs to do. And then we have a new currency. And that currency could exist side by side with the Federal Reserve note for a time to have a period of transition. And that's been my take for a long time, that it would be catastrophic to just shut one off without allowing time to move over. And so I think that's not going to be the move. This president doesn't seem to be intent on destroying the economic system of our country. I think he wants to move us into something that's better. And that's why I think we're going to have a side-by-side for a time to give us time to transition.
Excellent. Yeah, excellent. Thank you. And to the, before we move on to Bill, quick comment. You spoke about the process and the things that are required to take place in order for a new Treasury note to be introduced into the system. And according to Juan O Savin, I'm going to say that a few more times in this section of our discussion later. I won't be going into those referral points, but that's why Juan's on the record with me privately and on the episode that's coming out tonight, stating don't expect it to happen in June, the release of that currency, and don't expect it to happen on by July 4th or 5th. In fact, it'll happen later on. And I think, Will, you just laid down the groundwork as to why. Thank you very much. Bill, your comments on the US dollar, the new Treasury note being injected into the system and having dual currency for a period of time.
Yeah, I think Will Barney laid it out beautifully. And I would just say the touchstone there that I would go back to is that this has happened before. There's absolutely no issue with having multiple currencies at once. Even earlier I was talking about the pound losing world reserve currency status to the dollar. That's totally normal. In fact, that transition occurs not necessarily overnight. But it's significant, right? I think I mentioned over even just in a few years, the pound lost 30-40% of its value. So it's reasonable to assume that the dollar would obviously be far less favorable to a treasury dollar, and so it would take a dramatic hit. So it's not necessarily something you want to hold in the meantime, but at the same time, there's no issue with having two options. One of those will win. I think we all know which is the better option, which one will win. But they very, very likely, and I think absolutely will exist at the same time. And that gives patriots a chance to choose and, to have a chance to get out. You're always better to be a little early than a little late. But, oftentimes I talk to people who think, if I don't get this done today, that everything is going to zero. And I don't always think it's that stark. But it is to say that, if things go down, you're bleeding out, you lose all the blood in your body, as soon as you get shot, but you're bleeding out. So you want to get that wound tourniqueted sooner rather than later.
You raised such a good point there that I'd like to comment on that brings it home to each and every one of us personally. We'll have a decision to make for a period of time, as Will stated as well, about which currency we favor. Yeah, it's actually going to be that way, folks. Juan concurs with you, Bill. So think about it. This is going to be fun. Think about this. As that starts to happen, let me think. Would I be more confident having the Treasury note in my pocket, knowing it's backed by God's money, gold, silver, and other commodities, perhaps in a sovereign wealth fund, however that's all actually going to play out? Would I rather exchange, own, and have that money to run my world? Or would I rather have a Federal Reserve note, money is debt, backed by absolutely nothing, that will be, as you said, alluded to, dropping? And I think the answer is obvious. Now, probably a lot of purple and blue-haired people will end up with the Fed note. Well, good luck. But you know what, folks? I think a decision is pretty clear, and I think that is the way it's going to play out. And the last comment about that is on the note. Pardon me. Go to our website, wealthcoachuniversity.com, or go to Bloomberg, go anywhere you want. I make it easy for you. Got a link, the US dollar index. Start watching. We're talking about the Federal Reserve note. Start watching that as this year progresses. And I think you'll favor the Treasury note in your pocket versus a declining Federal Reserve note. Let's move on to the midterms. Again, I'll be alluding to Juan in the beginning here. We'll move off of Juan in a moment. And I said this sitting down with Juan face-to-face last weekend. I've been saying this for a while. I'm not sure your position's on it, but that maybe the midterms will happen, maybe they won't. And the reason I've always said that is just common sense. I know for sure that when we vote again, it has to be free and honest elections, or it should not happen yet, because we're not going to allow the massive destruction that took place in the last 4 years during the imposter Biden presidency. The loss of life in Ukraine and all the other issues never would have happened, and so many other things. And so we're going to have free and fair elections. And we know if the SAVE Act doesn't pass, we know that the president has a national emergency declaration to secure free and fair elections as an arrow in his quiver. And the other one that Juan is on the record now stating is a pause. And he projects the pause, meaning there won't be a midterm come November. I mean, there'll be one, but we won't be voting. There'll be a potentially 6 to 12-month pause till we get it right. Then we vote. Will Barney, what's your take on that?
Well, the question I have is, do we have a midterm or do we have a reset? The challenge we've had when you look at what's occurred in 2020, 2024, we have Maduro in custody. He knows how long this has been going on. We've probably had 2 decades of stolen elections in America, at least, okay? So with all of the data about to come out, and believe me, I really think Tulsi Gabbard's sitting on some of this. And for some reason, I have this image in my mind of her walking out of the building with everything blowing up behind her because she just dropped bombs everywhere, okay? and on her way out, which is very fascinating because Donald Trump has just announced that the new acting DNI is going to be Bill Pulte. Now, this is very fascinating. Why? Because Bill Pulte's been the guy running Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA.
Okay.
All the mortgage lending. What do you think he's been doing for the last year? He's been looking at the mortgage records of everybody. He knows the fake ones. He knows the ones that, wait, they're living in a $600,000 house, but their mortgage is $1.1 million. What happened?
Oops.
Right? And he's looking at all this. And so he has all the data. In fact, it was just a week or so ago, there was one of the members of Congress was complaining that Bill Pulte had looked at his personal mortgage information without his permission. Well, as the head of that organization, you have access to that data. I'm sorry, it's just the way it is. And Bill certainly didn't deny that he had done that. Now you're going to take that guy, you're going to put him in the situation where Tulsi Gabbard's at. Believe me, they're not just looking at who was elected by the stolen elections. They're looking at what they did. And so this is all going to unfold in an incredible way. Everybody's like, why would they pick some, mortgage guy to run the DNI? That makes no sense. He has no experience in intelligence. Believe me, this guy is fascinatingly wise. And he's been working to get all this done. And the most magical thing about acting appointments is they don't need congressional approval and they can operate for a period of time and do whatever is necessary. So I'm expecting there to be some pretty big stuff coming out of the events of the next few months that's going to really shake things up. Now, how does this lead into elections? It leads into elections because when we realize how absolutely corrupt and stolen the entire thing is, you don't just say, oh, well, that just already happened. It's going to be better this time. No, you have to fix it. And fix it means no machines. You got to do something. So it's probably going to mean an emergency order by the president, putting us into what essentially would be a state of martial law to fix this until an election can be held. And does that mean that we're pushing midterms off? I don't know for sure if this can be fixed. You're talking about not very far away. In 30 days, we hit the 4th of July. From the 4th of July to our next election, it's only 120 days. And if you read the NASARA documents, it says you need to have run elections, you need 120 days minimum, okay, to run an election. It doesn't mean it's exactly that. It just means that's your minimum time frame. So if this all comes out over the next, let's say, 60 days, we're outside of the time frame. And that would start looking like, as Juan said, a pause. So we're going to have to, the next 30 days and 60 days are going to be very critical, I think, in terms of showing us the direction this is going to go. But all the information's coming out. Maduro is singing like a canary. He knows all the countries, 72 nations, our own plus 71 others, all governments stolen. He knows all the governments, all the people, which countries did it, who was involved. You know, in the 2020 and 2024 elections, China was printing ballots for mail-in ballots for America. That is unauthorized paper. That doesn't have the watermarks. Why hasn't anybody brought this up? It's going to come out. If you're going to look at it and you're going to realize 2020 wasn't even an accurate election. And 2024 wasn't either. Okay. So I think what you're going to see is this election data is so big. And we talk, this is a financial show, so we talk about the financial stuff, but the election part of this is so big. It can't be understated. And we just had a new Fed chairman put in, okay, Kevin Warsh. And what do you think he's going to do? He's going to start dropping rates. He must drop rates. We don't get through the transition unless we can soften the pain on the one side to leave room to make that transition to the new system on the other side. And so I think Kevin Warsh is going to drop those rates. And some are going to view this as the Fed trying to compete with the new system by making it more attractive with lower rates. Okay. But it's really been gamed out better than that. And so are we going to have elections pushed off? I think there is, I'm a 50-50 on that's a possibility.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And you raised a lot of other points in addition to what Juan and I discussed as to why there would be a pause, and they're very well founded. Thank you. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. But again, folks, there's a little theme I'm doing here, and it's all off the cuff. But again, I'm speaking to the target audience that, throws the darts and, they're kicking the can. No. This is war. You still go home every night to your apartment or your house, don't you? You still have your electricity on, even though it's tough to pay the bill, don't you? You still eat food every day, don't you? Well, imagine the wars that our forefathers fought and what they went through. This is our war, and it's far less kinetic. I understand what the pandemic did to us. Make no mistake about it. I didn't take the vax, but I almost died as a result of the shedding and the COVID long haul situation. But listen, folks, it is what it is. It's not a can being kicked down the road. It's doing it right. The only way you cannot make a mistake on these type of subjects. It's catastrophic if you do, and there will be no mistakes made. So calm yourself. Bill, your view on extension of midterms?
Yeah, I think, obviously Will summed it up beautifully, but I would just say concisely that ultimately we can't have elections if they're improper, right? If they're not accurate, there's no, it's a pointless endeavor, right? So I think that the ultimate question is what kind of progress can be made, in the next several months, and it's hard to, we obviously aren't behind the door on that. If we can get to a point where the elections are not just possible, but correct and accurate, then obviously, of course, we have elections. But if we have to push that slightly in order to get to a position here where we can have a productive election, then that's what has to be done. I don't think that's a crazy take by anybody. I mean, you look at a lot of these puppet regimes, right, where elections happen and there's 200% voter turnout or this or that. And if we're in one of those situations, then all the election is it's pageantry, right? So we can't have pageantry. We need actual, honest, fair elections. And so then it's up to this administration to determine where we actually at in this process. How much have we uprooted? How much have protections have we gotten in place in order to have fair and free elections? And if we've gotten to that point, then great, absolutely. But if we haven't gotten to that point, then we absolutely need to defer that until we can accomplish that. So I think it's just, it's impossible for us to know. I think, Will Barney put it at 50-50. I think that's fair because, if I had access to the information where they were at in this, I could probably give a better assessment. But knowing what I know, seeing what I see, it does still feel like we're a ways away. But at the same time, I'm all for it. I want to have a good, free, fair, and honest election because when we do, it's going to look really, really good, and we're going to be all, I think, really excited by that, to have the first fair and free election in a very, very, very long time. So I would say it's certainly possible. I think 50-50, 60-40, somewhere in there is probably reasonable.
Yes, thank you. And you're right. We didn't get the memo, but as we connect the dots, it's quite possible. And at the end of the day, let me go back to something Will said a moment ago about Tulsi. I think you're right. She's going to walk out dropping a few hand grenades all over the place. That's just what the doctor ordered. Let her go help her husband who's suffering with cancer and so forth. And we wish her the best. But and there's a whole story to be told about her and many others. I mean, President Trump recently called Pete Hegseth, associated him with central casting. There's a whole lot of central casting going on, folks. It's all part of the plan. It's all okay. But at the end of the day, let her drop those hand grenades. It's just what the doctor ordered. And I look forward to it. And I think that's exactly going to happen. And you know what, folks? Well, I sure hope there's a midterm come November, if it's true and free and fair. I don't think it will be. If I think I'm on the side that says, well, 50-50, but if I had to go one way or the other, I'd say we're probably going to have to postpone it. We'll see how it all plays out. Juan talked about a category 6, equating the condition of America, the world really, but the eye of the storm is America. Taking a look at America, he labeled it a Cat 6, and you'll hear it, folks, in the broadcast tonight. And he said, we're at a Cat 2 right now. So there's a gauge for you in terms of pain that we endure in our war. And again, at the end of the day, you go home, you have heat when it's cold, you have air conditioning when it's hot, you have food when you're hungry, and you got shelter for your kids. It's horrible what we're all going through, but you have those things in this war. Think about that. So the category 2 that we're in is going to get significantly worse, but it's not going to be long lasting and long staying, if you will. So having said that, I'd like to bring it into the economy. We'll go Bill. So bonds, and we'll be brief on this because we've covered it before. So let's spend maybe a minute and a half on it. Juan's on the record stating the school bonds will be disastrous. It's already beginning. Municipal bonds are going to be a problem. There are other narratives outside the world, according to Juan, that state bonds in general are going to be a big problem with the sell-off of Japan and China dumping treasuries. China's down to like less than 700 million, a billion rather, treasury notes versus the 1.2 trillion they had. This is a trajectory that's taking place with the big players out on the street. And so I would, and I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I would say I think we could have bond corrections beyond school and municipal bonds. But when we're talking a Cat 2 to Cat 6 for many other aspects in this war, but as it relates to markets, since it's a financial show, what's your take on bonds in 90 seconds or less, Will Barney? Where are we heading?
Well, it's just coming into the periphery of people's vision. So it's going to take a few months before it really hits the fan, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem
Yes.
that the people are going to find out is that you have, they voted to issue new bonds for their schools because everybody votes for that. Oh yeah, the schools need more money. We should vote to issue a bond. Well, that's great. But what if they issued 5 bonds on the same vote?
Mm-hmm.
Then what? And who took the money? And where did it go? There's a whole lot to unpack here. And what happens is the county becomes on the hook for the bonds. And so what do? They're just going to raise your property tax so they can try to cover that nut, right? At least the interest portion of it. The problem is it's reaching a point where they can't even cover the interest. That's the stuff that's hitting the fan. So I think the bond market is going to have a disastrous effect, predominantly because you have hundreds of banks that are holding that as a asset, quote unquote, thinking that's giving them capital reserves. So it's a very precarious situation.
It is. And a quick comment, I'll be brief too, is, typically in the old financial advisor world model, you were in banking, I was a financial advisor, Bill's in the economy with on the hard asset side. They basically schooled us and taught us that, you, especially the older you get, you want to reduce the volatility of a stock portfolio by adding in an element of bonds for the safety factor. Maybe not so safe in a Cat 2 right now, folks. Bill, your comment on bonds.
Yeah, and I know we've talked a little bit about this, but ultimately, as the fraud is uncovered, right, then there's questions about the entirety of all of those bonds, and therefore they become worth less. Some of them are worthless, but all of them become worth less, and so you run into sort of a vicious cycle there, and so bonds take a massive hit. Yield curve inverts, and you run into the massive problems if you're in bonds. The things that are sort of pronounced as the safest become essentially a lot of people's unwinding. And this leads into, really a lot of other bigger problems. And Will Barney was alluding to this, which is that banks have this on record as collateral, as that which they build sort of the pyramid that they've levered money off of. So the problem, obviously, bonds are a big issue, but almost the bigger problem is what those bonds underscore and what they are the leverage for, the capital requirement for, and then sort of the pyramid that falls off of that. So I think it's two parts, obviously the bonds themselves being at risk, but then beyond that, everything that then hinges on those bonds collapsing on top of it. So it's a domino effect, certainly.
Thank you, Bill. Let's go to Bill and talk about stocks in 90 seconds or less. Again, now let me be clear on let me state this, and you can listen to Juan yourself tonight. I'm not sure if he addressed this in that episode, but I spoke with him about it in Bangkok, and he said we're not going to have a complete collapse, an utter collapse, a devastating collapse in the stock market. He said a correction, yeah, probably, not as severe as others are forecasting, and not for a long period of time. And in essence, he explained, as Will alluded to on some other matters earlier, President Trump doesn't want there to be crash landing wherever he can avoid it in various aspects of this reset. And stocks are a big part of it. These are manufacturers. We understand all the corruption over there, folks. Trust me, I get it. But how are we going to be an industrialized nation newly if everything collapses? So anyway, if I had to paraphrase Juan's words in Bangkok, yeah, perhaps a small correction for a period of time, and it won't be long-lived. And that's where he stands on the stocks. The elephant in the room is the dollar and the bonds. Will, where do you stand in your crystal ball? What's your forecast or feeling about where stocks may end up during this reset? The worst part.
I agree with Juan to a great degree, because the things that we're seeing is that this administration does not want a rug pull. They don't want to pull the rug out and just drop everything. You have pension funds, retirement funds, everything that's in this market. So that's not appropriate. But at the same time, if you listen to the SEC chairman, what he's saying, and has said on multiple occasions, within 12 to 24 months, all of the stock market will be on chain. So what does that mean? Well, when you move stocks onto blockchain, you essentially put it into a glass house. It's full transparency. What does this mean? It means no more naked short selling.
Yes.
Because they see if you have clothes on or not. Okay. And so it begins stock by stock, company by company. You begin cleaning that up. As you're doing that cleanup, there'll be pricing adjustments that will naturally come into play, which will be market adjustments. But I don't think it's going to be, let's wipe everything out. I think over the course of say that 24-month period of time, we get everything into transparency, we get everything into clarity, and now we can have a market that can move forward with that kind of transparency and be robust, I think, for the long term. So that's what we're seeing at this point.
Thank you, Will. And my quick follow-up is, remember the U.S. dollar. That's a big story. So even if you are in stocks, and let's say we have a minor short-lived correction. First off, nobody wants to go through that, but it's better than a collapse. Remember that you're in a U.S. dollar. Even if you own that stock and it hasn't collapsed, the U.S. dollar is going to be buying you a lot less. Anyway, Bill, what's your take on the position of the stock correction if it in fact happens during this reset?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, President Trump doesn't want to take a machete to, and that's not the goal here. It's a scalpel approach, right? Now, obviously, there's some controlled demolition that does need to occur. There's a lot of different, points we could go into that. But there is absolutely some air that needs to come out, and there's ways to approach that. And you're right to say that some of the bond will, the explosion there will bleed into leveraged money that is in the market. But ultimately, again, the goal is not to destroy every company out there. That's not what Trump wants. That's not what anyone wants. But at the same time, some of this is the necessary, cancer that needs to be cut out in a way. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that, of course, markets come down a little bit. But in the long term, of course, we expect that we're going to enter into a golden age. And so there's going to be, productive companies that are going to perform really well and do great. Obviously, what we talk about a lot is a lot of people that are watching this are looking here in the interim and saying, while you're going through this, if you are someone that relies on or expects that you may or may not need access to funds, if you're in that period here where there's a 30% correction, a 40% correction, whatever it might be, maybe it's only 20%, but you really don't want to be in a position where you're having to sell. Let's say you have bills that something comes up and you're forced to sell stocks down 20, 30% to cover that. That's really not a position you want to be in. You want to be in a position where you're in something that is performing well, if anything, and you're able to sell that, while it's moving in the right direction. So when we talk about, the differences between gold and bonds and stock, and how I explain this to people, is that it's not necessarily that gold is this forever home for anyone's money, more or less. It's really about, a safe haven here while we weather this storm. Whether the correction is 10% or 50%, whether the dollar drops, 20% of its value or 50%, whatever, these numbers are almost irrelevant in the sense that we know the numbers are, somewhat substantial. And therefore, if we know they're going to be somewhat substantial, then you would rather insulate yourself in as much as possible. So that's really the key ingredient that I always talk to people about, and how I view this is that, if the market was going to drop 20% or 30%, would that change your thought process on, oh, well, that's not too bad or that's too bad? No, I mean, no one wants to lose anything. And if we understand that this is coming, then you ought to prepare yourself in as much as possible, or in any way possible. So that's kind of my thought process here. But the actual specifics of the exact number in which things drop is not necessarily the most important part of the conversation.
That's a good point. And we're going to shift gears in the conversation as we wind the show down to all the opportunities that are there, and to focus some light on that as well. But last asset class I'd like each of you to weigh in on, back to Will, is real estate. Juan's on the record with some concerns about real estate. Long term, by the way, stocks over time always make money. I mean, broadly speaking, over time. There's going to be tremendous opportunities in the stock and bond market, certainly stock market, once we get past all this, without question, in my mind, and real estate, same narrative there. But there's some interesting narratives that we'll break that down maybe in another show. But Will, what's your take on real estate through this reset? Up, down, safe, bad, good?
I think it's important to understand a little bit of history about what's happened over the last 3 to 5 years, because what we've had is this event, and the difficulties in the markets are not lost on anybody. And what we've seen over the last I'll say 3.5 years, particularly, is we saw a lot of Wall Street money get out of stocks and move into real estate. Well, when you throw billions of dollars in one direction into one sector of the economy, you disrupt that sector by creating anomalies that are not normal. They're artificial in nature. And that's exactly what happened. Is we saw real estate escalate 20, 30% in a year. And that wasn't typical of real estate. Real estate is your nice, solid, steady gainer, 1 to 2 to 3%, but not 30% a year. Yet many markets across America, we saw home prices going up by 30% in 1 year. It was unbelievable. Why? Because billions of dollars are being thrown into homes, and now you have big corporations that are competing with the home buyers, which is a family just trying to put a roof over their head. And they lose that battle every time because the corporation could just throw cash at it and it's a done deal. So this is problematic, okay? But what it means is that for the last few years, we've had an artificial inflation of value, and I think that needs to be corrected somewhat. And Donald Trump doesn't want everybody's house to lose value. That isn't good for people. It's certainly not good for him politically, to everybody, but we need to stop this runaway train of they're just more and more and more expensive, because that's an unsustainability. So I think you're going to see the brakes put on with real estate. I think you're going to see some softening. It's already happening in many markets. I think you're going to see some correction. And certainly because of executive orders, all the corporate buyers are now out of the market. They're not, the executive order Donald Trump signed basically said, if you're a corporation, the house isn't for you. You got to be out of that market. This is for families to buy. So him making these moves is already softening the situation. We are seeing home prices fall in various markets because it's now coming to a real market where it's families buying homes, not corporations dumping Wall Street money. And so, yes, there will out of necessity come a correction. I'm not a fan of big, massive drops, though. It's the same thing with the stock market. I would rather not have, because it's too catastrophic. And for most families, their home is their biggest major asset that they hold. And that's going to be very hard for them if you see big major changes. So I'd rather see it soften and start to hold steady. Let's just have a 0.5% growth, not 30, and try to get some correction to this market that's been out of control. Hope that helps.
It does help. Thank you very much, Will. I want to go to Bill and talk about gold and silver for a minute. This is very important. Again, folks, the episode with Juan launches in 45 minutes. Be sure to watch it. Certainly it'll be up there. You can watch it tomorrow. But Juan's on the record. And he, in fact, corrected me when I overstated something, misquoting him. And that's all good, because the information was great news. And Juan stated that, and we've heard this narrative, we've reported it, you gentlemen and others on this show, but Juan basically said, yes, the president will revalue gold, and it will be between 20,000 and not as high as 25. And that's where I got corrected. I said 25. He said, no. All right, so who knows? 20,000. So again, if you knew a stock, talking to our audience, ABC stock, if you knew by legislation, by the stroke of a pen, making it legal, that all of a sudden that stock at $10 is going to go to $50, would you buy that stock? Of course you would. Buy gold, buy silver, buy now. I'll add buyer beware, and that's why we have Bill here. And I also have my free 10 modules at Wealth Coach University to arm you. But what great news. Remember, dangers and opportunities. Juan's on the record, as many of our esteemed guests are, stating very, very clearly the president will reset the value of gold. $42 on the book of the Fed. Well, they can have that. We'll take the 20,000. We'll take God's real money at the real value. So $20,000 an ounce of gold coming to a theater near you. Floors at silver ranging anywhere from $100 to $280 are the floating numbers. All of this on the near-term horizon. An audit coming to Fort Knox soon. Good luck with that. I'll ask you guys about that in a minute. So, Bill, put this into perspective. Don't be shy. Talk about the importance of people that do have investable assets on repositioning into different asset classes. What simple as this? What do investors want? What do people want? They want the right place at the right time, when to get in and when to get out. Okay, well, you've been given a crystal ball pretty much here, folks, on the gold and silver. You've got a crystal ball act. Your comments, Bill.
Yeah, I think the one, as you're talking there, everyone that's listening, you have all the information to make a really great decision. The thing that comes to mind is the one thing that stops people, I think, more than anything. So I'm talking to anyone that is going to say, "Oh, that's me," is you have done something one way your entire life, and it is hard often, I see, for people to change and say, "Well, I have just put my money in the market and I've done that for 40, 50 years, and that's kind of just what I do." And I understand that that is a big change because, again, it's hard to change a habit you've done for 40, 50 years. Hard to change a habit you've had for a year. But imagine 40, 50 years. So it's a big change. But truly, if you have the information and you understand what's happening, and the only reason you don't do anything is because, again, well, it's not what I'm used to because I've not done it before, that's really not a reason not to do something. In fact, it's really poor sort of excuse there. So my encouragement for anyone is just because something is different doesn't make it bad or anything like that. If anything, it means that you are lacking the education to make that change. But as people are listening here, you really have the facts and the figures to make the right decision. It's really just often it's you get up to the top of the diving board and it's just taking that step. So my encouragement to people is, you're not just jumping in there with nothing. You've been armed with, nope, this dive is safe. Everyone's done it. People have done it. And if you have questions, you don't approach that by just not asking anything and dwelling on it and not really doing anything. You take the first step, which is having a conversation, which is beginning to entertain this and go over that. What would that look like? Is this possible? And that's what I would tell people, because I don't think there's anything else based on what we've already said that people need to hear in terms of why this makes sense. We're at a very unique crossroads where it is both the sort of safe haven asset, but also a productive asset. Generally, gold and silver are the safe haven asset. It's a rare occurrence, a rare sort of merging of paths where gold and silver gets to be both the hyper productive asset and the safety class there. So this is kind of a tandem, a double driver asset time period that doesn't always last forever. And in fact, it doesn't. But there are these periods in history where if you are paying attention and if you are making the right moves, if you arm yourself with knowledge, you have the potential to really change your financial trajectory. I imagine people that, when 2008 was occurring, a little before that, they were saying, it really doesn't make sense that my neighbor owns 5 houses and doesn't have a job. That doesn't really seem appropriate. So, maybe this is not a great economy to be in. And so they took steps. Maybe they got into metals, they got out of the system. And guess what? They benefited. They didn't, incur the losses that 2008 brought. They in fact produced very, very well in gold and silver. And then when everyone else was down 30, 40, 50%, they were maybe selling their gold and silver and going to the market. So my thought with people is that you don't have to ride this economy like a roller coaster, up and down and up and down and up and down. You can take proactive steps to go up at the right time and leave at the right time as well. So this is kind of just choosing and picking, and you have to be a good and thoughtful steward. I think that's my, as a Christian, that's really the implication I give people is, you probably, if you have investable assets, you've been blessed. You have something that not everyone has, and you've got, I would say, a job to do, which is protect that, to steward that. And so if you have investable assets, you really need to think critically about that.
So well said. Thank you, Bill. We're going to wrap the show up in the next 3 to 5 minutes. I'd like to state this: a 40,000-foot view. Clearly, there are dangers. Cat 2 to a Cat 6 is not fun, and it's not just economic, but it will impact the economy. And there are direct problems with the economy, as everybody knows. And there are dangers here and lurking, and uncertainties, and a lot of it. And that leads to a lot of immobility for those that do have assets. What we're trying to do is jolt that a little bit, and steer you to information, education, so that you can make a decision that you're comfortable with and can sleep well at night. That's really what it comes down to. And you're not going to be in gold and silver forever. You're going to start paring that stuff down later. You're going to perhaps do ratio trades later, depending on how the numbers play out. But with everything we've reported, and Juan has reported, and others have reported, the opportunities within this world we're in of uncertainty and danger, well, there's some certainties and there's some tremendous opportunities. Get off the railroad track because the train is coming. And then when the train passes, get back on the track. I can't make it any simpler than that. I like to close this out. I had a lot of stuff I wanted to cover, but time is short. We're at 2-hour mark here. I'm going to close the show out to our audience with action items and resources to send you to. But before we do that, Will Barney, Fort Knox. Do you remember the movie, folks? Bruce Almighty, right, with Jim Carrey, and you know, he had all those Post-its all over the room. I guess he was answering God's prayers or whatever it was. All the yellow Post-its. Are we going to see a lot of yellow Post-its in the behind the vaults in Fort Knox that say IOU? You know, 50 million times they took a little bar out of there. Are we going to see a whole lot of things that look like gold, but it's tungsten? Are we going to see some gold? Are we going to see nothing? Your crystal ball, Will Barney.
They first brought this topic up over a year ago, right after President Trump came into office, and it was first brought up by Elon Musk. Hey, is there any gold in Fort Knox? And so this has been ongoing for some time. I'm pretty certain when they do the audit, everything will be there as it should be, as it's expected to be. But they've had some time now to get that done. I do think there's going to be an audit, but I think it's going to be appropriately done. And there's going to be assurance given that yes, the country can back a printing of its own currency. It has the resources. And particularly when you take that kind of tonnage that they're talking about and you move to a price that Juan is suggesting, now you really can back. And I don't think this is just important for America. If the whole world is going to a gold back or an asset backed currency, they want that price to be higher because that means the gold they're holding now covers more ground in terms of the currency for their people. So I think that, yes, I think it will be there. And I think the coming changes will give everybody, I think, some confidence and assurance for the future.
You know, I hadn't thought about that, Will. As you started opening up, I said, this is the first time I don't agree with Will Barney, and until I kept listening. So thank you for that. That narrative is quite possible, and if not probable. We'll wait. We'll wait and see. And I just want to inject to our audience, doesn't mean we don't have 650 airplanes filled of bullion gold. We've got it. Great sources that we've interviewed indicated it's well secured, perhaps Cheyenne Mountain and Reno. So we got it. It's just a matter of where it is. But I think your notion there, Will, is well founded. Bill, what's your take on
there's another bit of information. I'll keep this real short, but there has been people involved in the physical movement of metals that have reported that for the last year, particularly since Donald Trump's been in office, there have been anywhere from 1 to 2 tons of gold on commercial planes coming back from Europe out of the LBNA, coming back to America. And this has been ongoing all the time, for a long time. So I think things are in a better shape than people realize, but they will find that out with the audit.
Excellent. Thank you, Will. Bill Armour, gold, Fort Knox, where are you at?
Yeah, so I think Will gave me a great, something to dovetail off there. So back when this was first announced, the idea of doing the Fort Knox audit, J.P. Morgan, they caught some investigative journalists caught several employees there that were just taking as much as they could take on commercial flights here and flying it back from LBMA to the U.S. And this was like immediately following that. So I tended to, at the beginning of that, believe that there was a tremendous amount missing, and that Trump making that very public, like, hey, we're going to audit this, was a productive way to say, I don't care how the gold gets back there, but whatever's there is not there. That's not really relevant to me. What's relevant to me is that we get it back. So these public announcements of the last year, he said it initially, and then it's been kind of radio silence, and then he says it again. I think a lot of this was in response to the ex-CIA agent that had a bunch of gold bars that they found, and that obviously didn't belong to him. And so I think part of this is just the reminder to these different entities that have stolen from us, like, hey, we're still doing this. So if they start to get a lax, oh, well, we're going to get it back to you. We're still working on it. It's hard. Gold's expensive right now. It's like he puts that back out there to kind of put the iron on the fire and motivate them to say, you need to get this back there, because once we complete an audit, if there are metals missing, that's when it becomes very criminal, and obviously he goes after them. But I don't think he's as concerned. The best result is just we have the gold. It's not productive here to just throw people in jail and not have the gold. We'd rather have the metals back, and obviously that's the first priority here. So I think that that's part of what this is. And I tend to agree with Will Barney that this is an ongoing strategy to get the metals back. I don't know where we're at, how much we've reaccumulated versus how much we had initially lost. But I think that that's what's going on in the background there. So the end result is that we get the metals back. I just don't know where we're at with that. Do we have 80%, 90%? We have close to 100%. But I think that that's obviously what's being worked on. I think it's also why we haven't completed an audit yet, because otherwise it doesn't take that long. We could have accomplished this by now. So why haven't we? Because again, he's trying to give time for them to return the metals, and it's kind of a don't ask, don't tell situation. And that's his focus.
Well said. Thank you. There's a reason, we all, well, certainly people my age, but perhaps a lot of folks have heard the expression over years when people say, man, that's as good as gold. There's a reason they say that. And that's why this is all being repatriated back. Justice is being served, executive orders, law of war manual, presidential executive repeats, and all of these things are making all of this, of course, lawful and constitutional. And go back to full circle in my monologue that while the mechanics are being played out by the white hats, by the White House, and by all of us, this is God ordained. This is a spiritual battle, and gold and silver is God's money. It would only make all the sense in the world to repatriate it, take it from the stolen hands, and put it to use for the people. And that's exactly what we are doing. Next episode, I'm making an idea to one of my producers. Sandy, you're listening. Make a note. I'd like to talk with you about this. I want to do a dedicated episode, the lion's share of it, in the GFR. I want to talk about wallets, hot wallets, cold wallets, LLCs. What the heck does all this mean? Hey, Will Barney just said 2 hours ago, we've been here a long time, guys. He said 2 hours ago that the QFS isn't open for business for us, but yet people are telling people there are, and people are losing their money. Web3 blockchain for maximum security. What do all these things mean and more? We're going to talk about that I may have an extended panel, 4 of us, to break down that world. Also, I want to touch on other things I didn't get to in this episode. We'll talk about next week, the 6 million children signed up for the Trump accounts. We're going to talk about, I'm going to summarize robotics, AI, universal income, and wealth repatriation. Folks, there's more good news than bad news. All right, there certainly is, but no pain, no gain. We are almost there. I want to thank Will Barney and Bill Armour for being here. Their websites and names have been up on the screen the entire time. Give Bill a call for a free consult and get out of the system for now. And Will Barney, EnochGS.com, learn what that's all about. This is a big deal. It's extremely important, especially with the repatriation of wealth coming in as we begin to put forward our humanitarian projects. I want to thank my 2 esteemed guests. Thank you all very much. We're going to skip everything else to my producer. Time is out. We'll be right back after this important announcement. Thank you, gentlemen.
Your hard-earned assets are under attack and may be in harm's way. Many people are confused, thus concerned about what is going on with the currency, the markets, and the economy. A great change is underway. With the Private Wealth Coach Consult, of which John Michael Chambers discusses in greater detail in Module 10 of the Wealth Coach University, you can break through procrastination as you become informed, empowered, and connected. JMC has created a system whereby you can avail yourself to a team of like-minded professionals to help you navigate this unprecedented minefield and meet privately with John Michael Chambers. The Wealth Coach University was launched based upon years of experience as a successful former financial advisor to help you, Goots, Get out of the system.
Hello, this is John Michael Chambers. I retired after nearly 15 years as an independent financial advisor in 2008 to heed a higher calling. My biography can be accessed by visiting wealthcoachuniversity.com. I know what goes on behind the scenes in the world of Wall Street and investments, as well as having my finger on the pulse of the global financial reset of which we are presently engaged. Let's discuss the Wealth Coach Consult. I am not a financial advisor, and I do not give specific financial advice, nor can I assist you in the repositioning of your assets. I will, however, provide answers to your questions to the best of my ability and provide a high-level analysis of you and your situation. At the conclusion of our consult, if one is prepared to take the next step and begin repositioning assets to GOOTS, G-O-O-T-S, get out of the system, I will make available to you the appropriate individuals in my resource network. In the financial world, these are licensed, seasoned, patriot professionals that can assist in this area and to help you get from where you are to where you need to be as soon as possible, both confidentially and with confidence. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. By doing so, you gain access to the 10 free educational video PowerPoint modules. Then schedule your Wealth Coach consult with me today. I do look forward to speaking with you. It's time. So that's action item number one, because action does change things. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. Avail yourself to the 10 free video modules. Some of them are 5 minutes long. The longest one might be 20 minutes. Check them out, wealthcoachuniversity.com. Number two on the action item list, visit jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on Library of Truth in the navigation bar and gravitate. There's all kinds of categories. Save the Children, Robert David Steele, all different issues, free speech that we're facing. Click on the economic tab. All kinds of third-party documentaries and shows from other people that are very, very valuable. Some evergreen information, extremely important. Number three action item, Brandon Clark. Next week, he and I are launching a series. It'll go on for 6 or 8 consecutive weeks, and it'll conclude. It's evergreen information for retirees. People have been asking me, I'm retired, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. What am I going to do? Strategies for Retirees, Brandon Clark, triadretired.com, and I, your host, will be breaking down 2 things. Number one, how you can participate in stock market indexed returns with zero downside risk, good for retirees. And number 2, how you can secure a guaranteed income that you can never outlive for the rest of your life. Strategies for Retirees coming soon. Brandon Clark. If you don't want to wait, give him a call. Go to triadretired.com and you'll be able to access him there so you don't have to wait for the series to launch. Bill Armour, of course, my guest and good friend, acquiring gold and silver. Talk about he can help you with asset transitions, liquidations. They hold your hand through the entire process, but get the information. I said it's a buyer beware market earlier. It is, and Bill will make sure that you don't step on any of the landmines when you're making this transition. Not all metals deals are created equal, and not all metals are created equal. And lastly, as you just heard in the promotion announcement I just ran, you can access me on a very limited basis. Wealth Coach Consult. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. There's a mechanism with which to secure time with me, private, on Zoom. I enjoy when I meet with folks. Some of you are listening right now, I know. I won't mention any names, but it's great to meet you all and talk with you and calm your nerves and provide resources and a resource network for you to get out of the system for this period of time. All right, next week, Rob Cunningham is in the house. Rob Cunningham, Global Financial Reset. Come join us next week and sign up for free. Our free subscription, jmcbroadcasting.com, or consider our premium portal for just $9.99 a month with all kinds of benefits there, including our Patriot Q&A hour. And again, this month, Mike King will join me for 1 hour to answer your questions. That's a wrap, 2-hour plus show. I want to thank you all for being here. I've mentioned it, plugged it a lot of times, and for good reason. Coming up in 20 minutes, 10 p.m. Eastern, Wednesday night, USA. We're publishing the special broadcast sit-down I did with Juan O Savin I met with him in Bangkok. I came back to Chiang Mai, where I reside. And when I returned, I realized so much information the public needs. While some of it that Juan shared with me privately, I cannot release just yet, I'm going to get a clearance from him on one item that'll blow your mind. And once I get that clearance, I'm going to make it a fireside chat with me and share it with you. But please do watch the episode, special broadcast with Juan O Savin in 20 minutes from now. And it'll be up there tomorrow and forever for you to look at it. Anyway, thank you all very much. Those that are freaked out, for lack of a better word, calm down. Don't worry about what you can't control. Take control of what you can control and trust God's plan. It's unfolding and it is glorious. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.
The controlled demolition of the current financial system and restructure is happening right before our eyes. The current supremacy war is heating up. New tax policies, ending the Federal Reserve and the IRS as we know it. New banking system. How about the US dollar? Are we returning to a gold-backed currency, ultimately en route to a digital currency? A stable coin into an encrypted QFS? By reading the pages of this book and taking advantage of the opportunities within, you will become informed, empowered, and connected with the confidence to act. Saving America and protecting your wealth are not spectator sports. Will you be on the wrong side of history? It requires effort and due diligence, then action on your part. Action changes things. It's time. As we witness the greatest financial reset in history, prepare for a new era free from the shadow and control of the cabal. The future is bright, and it belongs to us, not the corrupt elite. We are mid-transitioning. We've not yet arrived. What's occurring during this transition? Danger. This is the danger zone on the economic and financial battlefield. There is tremendous opportunity to prosper. Strategies, models, and proposed solutions will be defined within the pages of this book. This is indeed a must-read book which should be shared with others. The Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. Pick up your copy today of this 5-star rated book at Amazon.com.